the wife who disappeared, was carrying his secret. 3 months ago, Elena Moretti walked out on the most dangerous man in Miami, her husband, crime boss Victor Moretti, convinced he had betrayed her. She vanished without a trace, determined to start over. But on a cold night in a hospital parking garage, expensive shoes echoed behind her. Victor had found her. What he didn't know? She was carrying his child. What she didn't know? Everything she believed about his betrayal was a lie. If you're hooked, stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the hospital parking garage flickered with the inconsistency of neglect, casting long shadows that danced across oil-stained concrete. Elena Marquez, she'd gone back to her maiden name, pulled her thin jacket tighter against the November chill as she trudged toward her car. The ancient Honda Civic sat in the far corner of Level B, exactly where she always parked it, away from the newer, shinier vehicles, away from notice, away from the life she used to live. Her feet ached from the double shift, and the chemical smell of industrial cleaner clung to her skin no matter how many times she washed her hands. 12 hours of mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, and emptying trash bins in Miami General Hospital. It was honest work, she told herself. Clean work. In a way her old life had never been. 3 months. 3 months since she'd walked out of the Moretti mansion with nothing but a suitcase and a shattered heart. 3 months since she'd signed the divorce papers her lawyer had prepared and left them on Victor's desk. 3 months since she'd seen the man she loved in the arms of another woman. Elena's hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach as she walked. The pregnancy test hidden in her bathroom drawer had shown 2 pink lines this morning. 4 weeks along, maybe 5. She hadn't been to a doctor yet, couldn't afford to, not on a janitor's salary. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd gone from a world of unlimited credit cards and personal physicians to calculating whether she could afford the copay at a clinic. The click of expensive shoes on concrete froze her mid-step, not the soft squeak of sneakers or the practical tap of working-class footwear. These were Italian leather, the kind that cost more than she made in a month now. The kind only one type of person wore in a hospital parking garage at 11 p.m. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Her keys bit into her palm as her hand clenched around them. She didn't turn around, didn't need to. She knew that walk. Had listened to it pace their bedroom floor on countless sleepless nights when Victor's business kept him up. Had heard it approach her from behind in their kitchen just before his arms would wrap around her waist. Elena. The voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, controlled, with that slight rasp that had once made her shiver. Now it just made her freeze. Don't. The word came out smaller than she intended. She forced steel into her voice. Don't say my name like that. Like what? Victor Moretti stepped into her peripheral vision, and Elena's traitorous heart lurched. He looked exactly the same. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that presence that made people move out of his way without him saying a word. His dark hair was perhaps slightly longer than she remembered, touching his collar. The charcoal suit was immaculate despite the late hour. But his eyes, those dark eyes that had once looked at her like she was his entire world, held something she'd never seen before. Exhaustion. Bone-deep weariness that no amount of expensive clothing could hide. Like you have the right, Elena said, finally turning to face him fully. Bad idea. Even now, even after everything, he was devastating. Like we're still... She cut herself off. Still married? Victor's jaw tightened. We are still married, Elena. You can't divorce someone without their signature. I never signed the papers. The parking garage suddenly felt too small, too airless. Why not? Why did you leave without asking me a single goddamn question? He took a step closer, and Elena backed against her car. 3 months, Elena. 3 months of silence. You changed your number, closed your bank accounts, disappeared like you never existed. I saw you! The words exploded out of her. I saw you with her Victor, with Lily. In your office, with her crying in your arms, you holding her like what? His voice was dangerously quiet now. Like I hold you? Is that what you thought? Elena's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of him. What else was I supposed to think? You'd been staying late every night for weeks, taking calls you wouldn't explain. And then I show up to surprise you with dinner, and she's in your arms, Victor, your assistant. The woman who's with you more than I am. Victor's hand shot out, bracing against the car beside her head. Not touching her, but close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. The scent of home, her treacherous mind whispered. You were supposed to trust me, he said, his voice raw. You were supposed to know me well enough to know I would never... He stopped, his composure cracking. Do you have any idea what these 3 months have been like? Thinking you hated me? Thinking I'd lost you forever? You should have explained, Elena said, but her voice wavered. You should have come after me that night. I tried. Victor's laugh was bitter. I tried, Elena, but you were already gone. Security footage showed you leaving the building before I even got out of that meeting. And then you vanished, completely. It took my best people 2 weeks just to find out you'd gone back to your maiden name. Something in his words made Elena's stomach drop. What do you mean, it took 2 weeks? Victor's expression shuddered. Nothing. Victor? She knew that look. What did you do? He pushed off the car, turning away from her. For a long moment, he said nothing, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I've been following you, making sure you're safe. The world tilted. You've been... what? Not directly. He still wouldn't look at her. I hired people. Discreet people. To watch over you. To make sure... His hands clenched into fists. You took a job as a janitor, Elena. You live in a neighborhood where I hear gunshots on the surveillance audio. You drive a car that should have been scrapped 5 years ago. Did you really think I could just let you go? Let you live like this and not make sure you were safe? Elena's emotions warred between fury and something dangerously close to tenderness. You had me followed for 3 months? Every single day. Now he turned, and the raw honesty in his face stole her breath. I've watched you walk to that bus stop every morning at 5 a.m. Watched you eat lunch alone on the hospital steps. Watched you fall asleep on the couch with the TV on because you're too exhausted to make it to bed. His voice cracked. And it's been killing me, Elena. Killing me to see you struggle when I could fix it all with one phone call. But I promised myself I wouldn't interfere. That if you wanted to be free of me badly enough to live like this, I'd respect that. Then why are you here now? Elena whispered. Victor's jaw worked, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A photograph. He held it out to her with a shaking hand. Elena's blood turned to ice. It was a picture of her, taken this morning, walking into the women's clinic on Morrison Street, the clinic where she'd planned to confirm the pregnancy. No, she breathed. When my people reported you'd gone to a women's health clinic, I thought... Victor's voice broke completely. I thought you were sick. That something was wrong, and you were dealing with it alone because I wasn't there, because you'd rather face it alone than call me. Elena's hand moved to her stomach again, an unconscious gesture she'd developed in the last few days. Victor's eyes followed the movement, and she watched as understanding dawned in his expression. Elena. Her name was a prayer, a question, a desperate hope. Are you... I don't know what you're talking about, she said quickly, but it was too late. The truth was written all over her face. Victor took a step toward her, then another, until he was close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Tell me, he said hoarsely. Please, Elena, tell me the truth. I can't. Tears spilled over despite her best efforts. Victor, I can't. Not when everything between us is what? Broken? His hand came up, hovering near her face but not quite touching. Then we'll fix it. Whatever it takes, we'll fix it. But please, Elena, please don't shut me out of this. The dam broke. 3 months of holding everything inside, of pretending she was fine, of trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice. It all came crashing down. 4 weeks, she sobbed. Maybe 5. I only found out this morning. I was going to confirm it, to figure out what to do. But I can't afford... I don't have insurance anymore, and the clinic costs... Victor's arms were around her before she finished the sentence, pulling her against his chest so tightly she could barely breathe. Mine? He asked against her hair, and she could hear his heart pounding like a drum. Of course yours, Elena said into his shirt, her tears soaking the expensive fabric. There's never been anyone else. There could never be anyone else. Victor's whole body shuddered. She felt him press his face into her hair, felt his own tears dampening her scalp. For a long moment they just stood there in the flickering garage lights, holding each other like they were the only solid things in a tilting world. Come home, Victor finally said, his voice rough with emotion. Please, Elena, come home. I can't, she pulled back, wiping at her face. Victor, I can't just... Everything I thought about that night, about you and Lily, was a lie. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Elena, look at me. Really look at me. Do you honestly believe I could ever want anyone but you? You saw me comforting my assistant because her mother was dying. The words came out flat, factual. Lily's mother had stage 4 cancer. She'd been given weeks to live, but she didn't have insurance, couldn't afford treatment. Lily came to my office that night because the hospital had just called to say her mother had hours left, and she didn't have money for a cab to get there. Elena's knees nearly buckled. What? I drove her to the hospital myself, Victor continued, his thumbs wiping away her tears. Sat with her in the waiting room until her mother passed. Then I paid for the funeral and the medical bills her mother had racked up. That's what you saw, Elena. That's the big betrayal. Me helping an employee whose mother was dying. Oh my God. Elena's hands came up to cover her mouth. Victor, I didn't. You didn't ask. There was hurt in his voice, but also understanding. You saw something that looked bad and you ran. Why, Elena? Why didn't you trust me enough to ask? The question hung between them, heavy with 3 months of misunderstanding and pain. Elena closed her eyes, trying to find the words to explain the fear that had driven her that night. My father left my mother for another woman when I was 7, she finally said. Came home one day, told her he was in love with someone else, and walked out. Never looked back. Never sent child support. Just gone. She forced herself to meet Victor's eyes. My mother worked herself to death trying to raise me alone. 3 jobs, no sleep, no help. She died when I was 16, and I've been on my own ever since. Victor's expression softened with understanding and pain. When I saw you with Lily, Elena continued, all I could think was that my mother had signs too. Late nights, mysterious phone calls, and she ignored them, trusted my father right up until the moment he destroyed us. I couldn't... Her voice broke. I couldn't wait around to be destroyed, Victor. I couldn't give you the chance to leave me like he left her. So I left first. Elena. Victor pulled her close again, his voice fierce. I am not your father, and you are not your mother. What we have, what we've always had, is nothing like that. I know. She did know, had known even as she was packing her bags. But fear had been stronger than reason. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Victor. I should have asked, should have trusted you, but I was so scared. We're going to fix this, Victor interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. Starting now. You're coming home with me tonight. Victor, you're pregnant, Elena, with my child, our child. Do you really think I'm going to let you go back to that apartment? Let you keep working 12-hour shifts on your feet? Let you worry about clinic costs when I have the best obstetricians in Miami on speed dial? I can't just... Yes, you can. His hand slid down to her shoulders, steady and sure. And you will. Because whatever else is broken between us, we both know one thing is true. I will always take care of you, always keep you safe, always make sure you and our child have everything you need. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence, on making her own choices. But the truth was, she was exhausted. Exhausted from working 2 jobs, from lying awake at night worrying about bills, from pretending she didn't miss him every single second of every single day. The divorce papers, I burned them. Victor's slight smile was the first she'd seen since he'd appeared. The day after you left them, threw them in the fireplace and watched them turn to ash. There will be no divorce, Elena. Not now, not ever. You can't just decide that unilaterally. Watch me. The smile faded, replaced by the implacable determination she recognized from his business dealings. I will fight you on this, Elena. I will fight every lawyer you hire, contest every filing, make it so expensive and complicated that you'll be 100 years old before it's finalized. Or, his voice softened, you could save us both the trouble and come home. This is crazy. But even as she said it, Elena felt the resistance crumbling. We can't just pretend the last 3 months didn't happen. I'm not asking us to pretend anything. Victor's hand moved to her stomach, splaying across it with reverent care. I'm asking for a chance to fix what's broken. To prove to you that I am nothing like the man who hurt your mother. To be the partner you deserve and the father our child needs. Elena's hand covered his, and for a moment they stood like that, connected by touch, by the life growing between them, by the love that had never really died despite everything that had tried to kill it. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. Victor's honesty surprised her. I'm terrified, Elena. Terrified that I'll mess this up again somehow, that I won't be enough, that you'll leave again and this time I really will lose you. But I'm more scared of not trying, of letting you walk away tonight and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. A car engine started somewhere in the garage, the sound echoing off concrete walls. The moment felt suspended, fragile as glass. 1 month, Elena heard herself say. Give me 1 month to see if we can fix this. If at the end of that month I still think this is a mistake, it won't be. Victor's certainty was absolute. But fine, 1 month, starting tonight. Get in the car. My car. I'll have someone pick it up tomorrow. Get in the car, Elena. His car was exactly what she expected. A sleek black Mercedes with leather seats and a price tag that could have covered her rent for a year. Victor opened the passenger door for her, the gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. How many times had he done this? Hundreds? Thousands? The drive to the Moretti mansion was quiet, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Elena watched the city pass by through the window, watched the neighborhoods gradually improve as they left her part of town behind. By the time they pulled through the gates of the estate, she felt like she'd traveled across a continent rather than 20 miles. The house was exactly as she remembered, massive, elegant, with warm light spilling from the windows. Home, her heart whispered. But was it still? Victor parked in the circular driveway and came around to open her door. She took his offered hand, her body remembering the gesture even as her mind still struggled with the reality of being back here. The staff has been gone since 7, Victor said as he unlocked the front door. I wanted us to have privacy tonight. The entry hall was pristine, exactly as she'd left it. Fresh flowers in the vase on the console table, roses, her favorite, the same artwork on the walls, even the same subtle scent of lemon polish and leather. Your room is ready, Victor said, and Elena's head whipped toward him. My room? I'm not assuming anything, Elena. His expression was carefully neutral. You'll have your own space, your old room if you want it, or the guest suite, whatever makes you comfortable. Something in Elena's chest cracked at his consideration. The Victor she'd feared he was becoming, the controlling, possessive man she'd imagined, would have demanded she share his bed, would have used the pregnancy as leverage. This Victor was offering her space, autonomy, choice. I don't know what I want, she admitted. That's okay. Victor moved toward the kitchen. Are you hungry? You worked a double shift. You need to eat. As if on cue, Elena's stomach growled. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a real meal, something beyond ramen noodles or gas station sandwiches. The kitchen was warm and bright, and Victor moved through it with surprising ease. He'd never been much of a cook during their marriage, usually leaving that to the chef, but he put together a plate of cheese, fruit, and bread with practiced efficiency. Eat, he commanded, sliding the plate toward her. For the baby, if not for yourself. Elena sat at the island and picked at a piece of cheese, watching Victor move around the space. He'd taken off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, and the domestic normalcy of it was almost painful. Lily knows you found me, doesn't she? Elena asked suddenly. Victor paused in the act of pouring water. She does. What did she say? She said it was about damn time. He set the glass in front of Elena. She's been furious with me for months, said I should have tracked you down the first week and made you listen, that I was being an idiot by giving you space. Despite everything, Elena smiled slightly. She was always smarter than both of us. She was. Victor leaned against the counter, arms crossed. She also wanted me to tell you that she's sorry, that she should have explained about her mother before it became an issue. She assumed I'd told you, and I assumed she had. We all assumed a lot of things, Elena said quietly. She ate a strawberry, the sweetness exploding on her tongue. When had she last eaten fresh fruit? Victor, about the baby, we'll see a doctor tomorrow. His tone left no room for negotiation. The best in Miami. We'll make sure everything is okay. Start prenatal care, whatever you need. I can't afford. You don't need to afford anything. Victor's voice was gentle but firm. Elena, you're carrying my child, our child. Money is not, will never be, a concern. Not for medical care, not for anything. Pride warred with practicality in Elena's chest. She'd been so determined to make it on her own, to prove she didn't need Victor's money or his protection. But the truth was, she'd been struggling, badly. And now there was a baby to think about. This doesn't fix everything, she said finally. I know. We still have things to work through, trust to rebuild. I know that too. And I'm not just going to fall back into being the perfect Moretti wife, attending charity galas and pretending I don't know what you do for a living. Victor's expression grew serious. About that, I don't want to know the details, Elena interrupted. I never did. That was our arrangement. Things have changed. Victor moved closer, his gaze intense. I've changed. Or I'm trying to. Elena, these last 3 months without you have made me reevaluate a lot of things. The business I'm in, the risks I take, the life I lead. It's not sustainable. Not if I want to be a father. Not if I want to deserve you. Elena's heart stuttered. What are you saying? I'm saying I want out. The words seemed to cost him. Not immediately. It's not that simple, but I'm working on it. Legitimate businesses to transition to. Connections to sever. It's going to take time, but I'm committed to it. Because of me? Because of us. Victor's hand found hers across the island. Because of the family we're going to build. Because I'm tired of living a life where I have to watch the people I love suffer because of the choices I've made. Elena stared at him, searching for the lie, the manipulation, the angle. But all she saw was sincerity, raw, honest sincerity. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll give me the month you promised. Victor's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Say you'll let me prove to you that I can be better. That we can be better. Elena looked down at their joined hands, at the wedding ring she'd stopped wearing but had never been able to throw away. It sat in a box in her apartment, a reminder of everything she'd lost, everything she might still have a chance to reclaim. 1 month, she agreed. But Victor, if at the end of that month I still think this won't work, then I'll sign the divorce papers. The words seemed to physically pain him. If that's what you really want. But I'm going to spend every day of that month showing you that it's not what you want. That this, us, is worth fighting for. Elena's hand moved to her stomach again, and Victor's followed. Together they rested there, a silent promise to the life growing inside her. I'm exhausted, Elena admitted. Today has been... I know. Victor stood, gently pulling her to her feet. Come on, let's get you to bed. He led her upstairs, past the master bedroom they'd once shared, to the guest suite at the end of the hall. It was beautiful, all soft blues and creams, with a king-size bed that looked like heaven after the lumpy mattress in her apartment. There are clothes in the closet, Victor said, lingering in the doorway. I had some things brought in. If they don't fit or you don't like them, we'll get whatever you need tomorrow. Elena turned to look at him, this man who had tracked her down, who had followed her for months just to make sure she was safe, who was offering her space and time and understanding even though she could see how much it cost him. Victor? Yes? I'm glad you found me tonight. His smile was sad but genuine. So am I. Get some rest, Elena. Tomorrow we start fixing this. He started to leave, but Elena's voice stopped him. Victor? Will you... She hesitated, then pushed through her fear. Will you stay? Just until I fall asleep? You don't have to, Yes. He was across the room in 3 strides, settling into the chair beside the bed. I'll stay as long as you need me to. Elena climbed into bed, fully clothed, and pulled the soft comforter up to her chin. The mattress was comfortable. The The sheets were clean, and for the first time in 3 months, she felt safe. Victor's presence was a steady warmth in the darkness. She could hear him breathing, could feel him watching over her like he'd been doing from a distance for months. "Victor?" she murmured, already half asleep. "I'm here. I never stopped loving you." The confession slipped out, pulled from her by exhaustion and emotion. "Even when I thought you'd betrayed me, even when I hated you, I never stopped." She'd heard him move, felt the bed dip as he sat on the edge. His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing gently. "I know," he said softly. "I never stopped either, and I never will." Elena's eyes drifted closed, and for the first time in 3 months, she fell asleep without crying. In the chair beside the bed, Victor Moretti kept his vigil, watching over the woman he loved and the child he didn't yet know, making silent promises to them both. Tomorrow, he would start proving himself worthy of a second chance. Tonight, he was just grateful to have them home. Morning light filtered through the gauzy curtains, painting Elena's face in soft gold. She woke slowly, awareness returning in fragments. The unfamiliar softness of expensive sheets, the faint scent of cedar, the profound quiet of a house insulated from the world by money and walls. Then memory crashed in like a wave. Victor. The parking garage. The baby. Elena's hand flew to her stomach as she sat up, her heart hammering. For a disorienting moment, she thought maybe she'd dreamed it all, that she'd wake up in her cramped apartment with its water-stained ceiling and thin walls that let through every neighbor's argument. But the room around her was undeniably real. Elegant furniture, soft carpet, and through the open door to the ensuite bathroom, she could see marble countertops and fluffy white towels. The chair where Victor had sat was empty. Elena found herself both relieved and disappointed. She swung her legs out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and padded to the window. The view overlooked the estate's gardens, immaculate lawns stretching toward the gate. She used to love this view, had spent countless mornings drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over those perfectly manicured hedges. A soft knock at the door made her turn. "Come in," she called, her voice rough from sleep. The door opened to reveal not Victor, but a woman Elena recognized immediately. Maria, the housekeeper who'd worked for the Morettis for 20 years. The older woman's face lit up with a smile that was equal parts relief and joy. "Miss Elena," Maria said, her accent thick with emotion. "It's so good to see you home." Elena's throat tightened. "Maria, No. Maria crossed the room and pulled Elena into a fierce hug. "You don't explain nothing to me. I'm just glad you're back where you belong." She pulled away, her hands on Elena's shoulders, studying her with a critical eye. "You're too thin. We fix that. Come, I make you breakfast." "Where's Victor?" "He's been on the phone in his study since 5 this morning," Maria said, her tone disapproving. "That man never sleeps, but he left instructions. You're to eat, then he wants you to see the doctor at 10. Elena glanced at the bedside clock. 8:30. She had an hour and a half. "Maria, I don't have any clean clothes." "In the closet." Maria gestured toward the walk-in. "Mr. Victor, he had things brought in last night. If they don't fit, you tell me and we get more." The closet was full of clothes, all in her size, all in styles she would have chosen for herself. Comfortable loungewear, jeans, soft sweaters, nothing flashy or expensive looking, just quality basics. Victor had remembered that she'd never been comfortable in designer labels, had always preferred simple, practical clothing. The attention to detail made her chest ache. She showered quickly, the hot water a luxury after months of the temperamental water heater in her apartment. When she emerged, dressed in soft gray yoga pants and a loose white sweater, she found Maria had laid out a tray of fresh fruit, yogurt, and whole grain toast on the small table by the window. "Eat," Maria commanded. "All of it. You're eating for 2 now." Elena's head snapped up. "How did you—" "Mr. Victor tells me everything," Maria said with a knowing smile. "And I have eyes. You have that glow. My daughter, she had the same one when she was expecting." Elena sat and picked up a piece of toast, spreading it with butter that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget used to. "Maria, I don't know if I should be here. Where else would you be?" The housekeeper's voice was gentle but firm. "This is your home, Miss Elena. It's always been your home, and that baby you're carrying, That baby belongs here too. It's complicated. Love always is. Maria moved to straighten the already perfect bedding. But running away doesn't make it less complicated. It just makes you tired and alone. The words hit closer to home than Elena wanted to admit. She ate in silence, watching the gardens brighten as the sun climbed higher. By the time she'd finished, it was 9:45. Maria led her downstairs through hallways Elena knew by heart, but that now felt strangely foreign. Everything was the same, the artwork, the furniture, even the arrangement of photos on the console table in the hall. But she was different. 3 months had changed her in ways she was still trying to understand. Victor's study door was closed, his voice a low murmur behind it. Maria knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Miss Elena is ready," she announced. Victor looked up from behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear. His eyes locked on Elena, and something in his expression softened. He said something quick into the phone, then ended the call. "You look better," he said, standing. He'd changed into a different suit, navy this time, but his eyes still held that same exhaustion from last night. "Did you eat?" "Yes." Maria made sure of it. "Good." Victor came around the desk, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. "The doctor is expecting us at 10. Dr. Sarah Chen, she's the best obstetrician in Miami. She'll do a full exam, ultrasound, make sure everything is progressing normally." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." His tone left no room for argument. "Come on, the car's waiting." The drive to the medical center was quiet, the tension between them a living thing. Elena watched the familiar streets pass by, trying to reconcile the two realities of her life, the one she'd been living for 3 months and the one she was falling back into now. "You're thinking too loud," Victor said without looking at her. Despite herself, Elena smiled slightly. "I'm allowed to think." "You're allowed to do whatever you want." He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. "But if you're having second thoughts about being back, I'm not." The words surprised her with their certainty. "I'm just adjusting. Take all the time you need." The medical center was nothing like the clinic Elena had planned to visit. This was all marble floors and fresh flowers, soft music, and comfortable furniture. The kind of place where money bought not just medical care, but comfort and privacy. Dr. Chen was a petite woman in her 40s with warm eyes and a calm demeanor. She greeted Elena like an old friend, though they'd never met, and managed to make the examination feel routine rather than invasive. "Everything looks good," Dr. Chen said as she moved the ultrasound wand over Elena's still flat stomach. "Based on your last menstrual period and the measurements I'm seeing here, I'd put you at about 6 weeks along." 6 weeks. Elena's hand tightened on the edge of the examination table. 6 weeks meant the baby had been conceived right before she'd left, one of the last times she and Victor had been together. "Can we hear the heartbeat?" Victor asked from his position beside the table. He'd barely moved since they'd started, his eyes fixed on the grainy black and white image on the screen. "Not quite yet," Dr. Chen said. "Usually around 8 weeks we can pick it up, but I can show you." She pointed to a tiny flicker on the screen. "See that? That's the heartbeat. Too early to hear it, but you can see it." Elena's breath caught. That flutter of movement, barely visible, was their child. Real. Alive, growing inside her. Victor's hand found hers, squeezing so tight it almost hurt. When Elena looked up at him, there were tears tracking down his face. "That's our baby," he said hoarsely. Dr. Chen smiled. "That's your baby. Measuring right on track, strong heartbeat. Everything looks exactly as it should." She handed Elena some tissues to wipe off the gel. "I want to see you back in 2 weeks for a follow-up. We'll do another ultrasound, check your blood work. Start you on prenatal vitamins." "Thank you," Elena managed, her own voice thick with emotion. "My pleasure." Dr. Chen stood, giving them both a knowing look. "Congratulations, both of you. This is a good thing." After she left, Elena and Victor sat in silence for a long moment. The ultrasound photo lay on the table between them, that tiny flicker captured in grayscale. "I can't believe it's real," Elena whispered. "It's real." Victor picked up the photo with reverent care. "We're having a baby, Elena. In 7.5 months, we're going to be parents." The weight of it settled over them both. Elena tried to imagine Victor as a father, Tried to picture him changing diapers, pacing the floor at 3 a.m., reading bedtime stories. The image didn't quite fit with the man she knew, the crime boss who commanded respect through fear and power. But maybe that was the point. Maybe neither of them would be the same people they'd been before. "We should go," Elena said, climbing down from the examination table. I have things at my apartment that I should get." Victor's expression shuddered. "I'll send someone to pack everything up." "No." Elena shook her head. "I want to do it myself. There are things I need to sort through, decide what to keep. Then I'm coming with you." "Victor, non-negotiable." His voice was firm. "You're not going back to that neighborhood alone." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence, but the truth was, she'd be glad for the company. Her apartment had felt lonely even before she'd spent the night in the mansion. Now it would feel positively desolate. The drive across town was a study in contrasts. They left the clean, wealthy streets of Coral Gables and traveled into neighborhoods where chain-link fences replaced decorative hedges and bars covered windows. Elena watched Victor's jaw tighten with each passing block, saw his hands flex on the steering wheel. "Don't say it," she warned. "Say what?" "Whatever you're thinking about how dangerous this neighborhood is." "I don't need to say it." Victor pulled up in front of her building, a faded 4-story walk-up with cracked concrete steps. "The bullet holes in that sign say it for me." Elena climbed out without responding. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, and the stairwell smelled like old cigarettes and mildew. She was acutely aware of Victor behind her, of how out of place he looked in his expensive suit navigating these worn stairs. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it, small, sparse, depressing. The furniture was secondhand, the paint was peeling, and the single window overlooked a brick wall. It had been her sanctuary for 3 months, her proof that she could survive on her own. Now it just looked sad. "You lived here," Victor said quietly, and it wasn't a question. "For 3 months, you lived here when you could have been—" "Don't." Elena moved to the kitchenette, opening cabinets to pull out the few dishes she owned. "I made my choice. I have to live with it." "We both do." Victor stood in the center of the small living area, looking lost. "What do you want me to do?" "There are boxes under the bed. Start packing books, I guess." They worked in tense silence, filling boxes with the meager possessions Elena had accumulated. Clothes that had seen better days, chipped mugs, a few books from the thrift store. It all fit into 6 boxes, her entire life for the past 3 months reduced to containers that would fit in Victor's trunk. Elena was in the bathroom, packing her toiletries, when she heard Victor's sharp intake of breath from the bedroom. She stepped out to find him standing by the dresser, holding a small velvet box. Her wedding ring. "You kept it," he said, staring at the simple platinum band like it was a miracle. "I couldn't throw it away." Elena crossed her arms, defensive. "I tried. I went to the pawn shop 3 times, but I could never actually do it." Victor opened the box, and Elena watched his throat work as he swallowed hard. The ring caught the weak sunlight from the window, gleaming with promise and heartbreak in equal measure. "May I?" he asked, holding it up. Elena's instinct was to refuse, to say it was too soon. They had too much to work through. But when she looked at Victor's face, at the hope and vulnerability there, the words died in her throat. She held out her left hand. Victor slid the ring back onto her finger with shaking hands, and it settled into place like it had never left. Then he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles just above the band. "I'm going to earn this," he said quietly. "Earn the right to see you wear it. I promise you, Elena." Before she could respond, a knock at the door made them both freeze. Elena wasn't expecting anyone. She'd made no friends in this building, had kept to herself deliberately. "I'll get it," Victor said, his whole demeanor shifting. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by someone harder, more alert. He moved to the door with predatory grace, checking the peephole before opening it just a crack. "Yes?" "Is Elena Marquez here?" A woman's voice, familiar. "I need to speak with her." Victor looked back at Elena, questioning. She moved closer, recognition dawning. "Lily?" Victor opened the door wider, and Lily Chen stepped into the apartment. She looked exactly as Elena remembered. Petite, professional, with intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. But there was something different in her expression now, determination mixed with regret. "Elena, Lily's voice was thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. I should have come sooner, but I didn't know where to find you, and Victor wouldn't tell me. She shot Victor a reproachful look. We need to talk. About that night. About everything. Victor stepped back. I'll be in the car. No. Lily's voice was firm. You should hear this too. Both of you need to hear it. Elena gestured to the worn couch. Sit, please. Lily perched on the edge of the cushion, her hands twisting together nervously. I've been carrying this guilt for 3 months. Victor told me what happened, that you saw us that night and thought. She broke off, shaking her head. I should have explained. Should have told you about my mother, about what Victor was doing for us. But I assumed you knew. Victor always tells you everything, so I thought. He didn't tell me because it wasn't his story to tell, Elena said gently. It was yours, and I should have asked before I ran. My mother died that night, Lily continued, tears spilling over, in my arms, in a hospital bed that Victor paid for. She was comfortable, pain-free, because of him, because he saw me crying in the office one day and asked what was wrong. And when I told him, he didn't hesitate, just said, give me the hospital name, I'll handle it. Elena's chest tightened. That was so perfectly Victor, decisive, generous to those under his protection, asking for nothing in return. The medical bills were over $300,000, Lily said. Experimental treatments, private rooms, the best hospice care available. Victor paid all of it. And when she passed, he paid for the funeral too. Catholic service, burial plot, everything my family couldn't afford. She looked at Victor with something like reverence. He saved my mother's last months from being a nightmare of debt and desperation. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. Lily, I'm so sorry about your mother and about the assumptions I made. You had reasons for those assumptions. Lily's voice was gentle but firm. I did some research after Victor told me you'd left. Found the records of your father abandoning your family. I understand why seeing us together would trigger that fear. Elena shot a look at Victor. You told her about my father? I tell Lily everything, Victor said simply. She's my executive assistant and my friend. When you left, I needed someone to talk to or I would have gone insane. She's the one who convinced me not to drag you back here by force. Despite the gravity of the situation, Lily smiled slightly. It took considerable convincing. He had your location within 48 hours and wanted to storm whatever address you were at. Why didn't you? Elena asked Victor. Because Lily pointed out that dragging you back against your will wouldn't solve anything. Victor's expression was rueful. That I needed to let you come to your own conclusions, in your own time. That if I forced the issue, I'd only confirm whatever fears had driven you away. Though I didn't expect it to take 3 months, Lily added. I thought after a few weeks you'd calm down and reach out. I was too stubborn, Elena admitted, and too scared. The longer I stayed away, the harder it became to imagine coming back. Lily stood, moving to sit beside Elena on the couch. She took Elena's hands in hers. I need you to understand something. Your husband is many things, some of them frightening, some of them ruthless. But he is not a cheater. He doesn't even see other women. I've worked for him for 5 years, and in that time, he's never so much as flirted with anyone. You're it for him, Elena. You always have been. I know that now, Elena said quietly. Or I'm starting to. It's just hard to undo a lifetime of fear in one night. Then take more than one night. Lily squeezed her hands. Take whatever time you need, but do it while you're with him, not while you're hiding in a place like this. She gestured around the shabby apartment. You deserve better than this. Your baby deserves better than this. Elena's hand moved to her stomach, and Lily's eyes widened. You're pregnant? The joy in Lily's voice was genuine and immediate. Oh, Elena, that's wonderful. Congratulations. She looked at Victor. You didn't tell me that part. I only found out last night, Victor said. We saw the doctor this morning, 6 weeks along. Lily's smile was radiant. A baby. Victor Moretti is going to be a father. I never thought I'd see the day. Neither did I, Victor admitted, and there was such wonder in his voice that Elena's heart squeezed. They talked for another hour, Lily filling in details about the night Elena had left, about Victor's descent into barely controlled panic when he couldn't find her, About the nights he'd stayed at the office until dawn because going home to their empty bedroom was too painful. He kept your coffee mug, Lily said, the one with the chipped handle that you always used. It's still on his desk. He uses it every morning. Elena looked at Victor, who had the grace to look embarrassed. It's a good mug. It's a terrible mug, Lily said with affection. But it's hers, so you kept it. By the time they finished packing and loading boxes into Victor's car, the sun was setting. Lily hugged Elena goodbye at the curb, whispering, "Give him a chance. That's all I ask. A real chance." "I will," Elena promised, and she meant it. The drive back to the mansion was quieter, but less tense. Elena found herself watching Victor's profile in the fading light, seeing him with new clarity. This man who had paid hundreds of thousands for a stranger's medical care, who had kept her coffee mug like a talisman, who had followed her for months not to control her but to keep her safe. "What are you thinking?" Victor asked, catching her staring. "That I've been an idiot. You've been hurt." His correction was gentle. "There's a difference." Back at the mansion, Maria had dinner waiting. Real food, not the microwave meals or ramen Elena had been subsisting on. They ate at the kitchen island, the formal dining room too much for just the two of them. "I have a meeting tomorrow," Victor said as they finished. "Business I can't postpone, but I'll be home by 6. We could have dinner together. Talk more about—" He gestured vaguely. "Everything." "I'd like that." Elena surprised herself with how much she meant it. "Victor, about us, about the month I asked for, you can have as long as you need," he interrupted. "I shouldn't have put a time limit on it. That was unfair." "No." Elena shook her head. "A month is reasonable. By then, I'll know if this can work, if we can rebuild what we had. And if you decide it can't," the question clearly pained him, "then we'll figure out how to co-parent." Elena's hand rested on her stomach. "I won't keep you from your child, Victor. Whatever happens between us, you'll be this baby's father." Something in Victor's expression cracked, relief and gratitude warring with lingering fear. "Thank you. That means more than you know." That night, Elena lay in the guest room again, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind raced with everything Lily had said, everything she was learning about the man she'd married and then left. Around midnight, she gave up and padded downstairs in search of warm milk, an old remedy her mother had sworn by. The kitchen was dark except for the light over the stove, and Elena was halfway across the room when she realized she wasn't alone. Victor sat at the island in the darkness, a glass of whiskey untouched in front of him. "Can't sleep?" Elena asked softly. He looked up, and even in the dim light, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features. "Too much on my mind." "Me too." Elena moved to the refrigerator, pulling out milk. "Want some?" "I'm good." He watched her heat the milk on the stove, a small smile playing at his lips. "Your mother's remedy. You remember." "I remember everything about you, Elena." His voice was quiet but intense. "Every habit, every preference, every small detail. I've spent 3 months trying to forget and failing completely." Elena poured the warm milk into a mug. Her old mug, she realized with a start, the one Lily said he'd kept, and leaned against the counter across from him. "Why didn't you move on? You could have. 3 months is long enough to start over." "With who?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "Elena, I've loved you since the moment I met you at that charity gala 4 years ago. You were wearing that green dress and arguing with the catering manager about sustainable food sourcing. You didn't know who I was, didn't care about my reputation. You just cared about doing the right thing." Elena remembered that night. She'd been working for the nonprofit hosting the gala, and the caterer had been using suppliers known for worker exploitation. She'd been making a scene when Victor had appeared at her elbow. "You offered to pay the difference," she said, "to switch to ethical suppliers on the spot. Because watching you fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." Victor's eyes held hers. "I fell in love with you that night, Elena, and I've never fallen out of it. Not when you left, not during these 3 months of hell, not ever." "Victor, I'm not trying to pressure you," he said quickly. "I'm just answering your question. Why didn't I move on? Because there's no moving on from you. You're not something I can get over or forget. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved, and you're the only one I ever will. Elena's hands trembled around the mug. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything. Victor stood, leaving the untouched whiskey behind. But I wanted you to know. Whatever you decide at the end of this month, wherever we end up, you need to know that for me, you're it. You're everything. He started to leave, and Elena heard herself say, "Stay." Victor froze. What? Stay here. Talk to me. Help me understand. She struggled for the right words. Help me understand how we got here. How we went from that night at the gala to this. Victor returned to his seat slowly, as if afraid any sudden movement might make her change her mind. What do you want to know? Everything. Start at the beginning. So he did. He told her about falling for her that night at the gala, about spending weeks finding excuses to run into her at nonprofit events, about finally working up the courage to ask her to dinner and the terror he'd felt that she'd say no. Elena listened, remembering her own version of those early days. How charming Victor had been. How different from the criminals she'd imagined populated his world. How he'd wooed her with thoughtfulness rather than extravagance, with attention rather than gifts. I knew what you were, Elena said quietly. Even then, everyone knew Victor Moretti wasn't exactly legitimate. And yet you said yes when I asked you to marry me. Because I loved you. The admission came easier now. Because when I was with you, I felt safe for the first time since my mother died. Protected. Cherished. What changed? Victor asked. When did that feeling stop? Elena thought about it, tracing the erosion of her security back to its source. When you started keeping secrets. The late nights, the phone calls you wouldn't explain. I told myself it was just business, that I didn't need to know the details. But it felt like walls going up between us. I was trying to protect you, Victor said. The less you knew about certain aspects of my business, the safer you'd be. If anyone ever came after you, tried to use you against me, I wanted you to genuinely have no information. I understand that now, but at the time it felt like you were shutting me out. They talked until the early hours of the morning, working through 3 months of misunderstanding and pain. Victor explained his business, not the details, but the broad strokes. The empire he'd inherited from his father, the obligations that came with it, the carefully maintained balance of power that kept Miami's underworld from descending into chaos. I never wanted this life, he admitted. When my father died and left it all to me, I considered walking away, letting someone else take over. Why didn't you? Because walking away would have meant war, blood in the streets, innocent people caught in the crossfire. So I took control and kept the peace. He met her eyes. But I've never been comfortable with it, never been proud of it. Is that why you want to go legitimate? Partly. But mostly it's because of you. Victor's hand reached across the counter, and Elena let him take hers. You make me want to be better than I am. And now with the baby, I can't raise a child in this world, Elena. I won't. It's dangerous, though, leaving. Won't there be people who try to stop you? Probably. Victor's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. But I've been planning it carefully. Transitioning assets, building legitimate businesses to replace the illegal ones. It'll take time, maybe another year, but it's happening. Elena looked down at their joined hands, at the wedding ring back on her finger. I want to believe you. Then believe me. Victor's voice was fierce. I've never lied to you, Elena. Not once. Everything I'm telling you now is the truth. I know. And she did. Whatever else Victor was, whatever crimes he might have committed, whatever moral lines he might have crossed, he'd never lied to her. I'm trying. I really am. That's all I ask. The sky was lightening outside the windows when they finally headed upstairs. At the door to the guest room, Victor hesitated. I don't want to be presumptuous, he said carefully. But if you'd rather not sleep alone, there's plenty of room in the master suite. You could take the bed, I'll take the couch. Elena considered it. The guest room was comfortable but impersonal. The master suite was their room, the bed they'd shared for 2 years of marriage. Going back to it felt like a step she wasn't ready for. But maybe that was the point. Maybe taking steps she wasn't quite ready for was how they'd rebuild this. Okay, she said, but we both take the bed. It's big enough. Victor's expression flickered with hope and caution. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The master suite was exactly as Elena remembered. Victor clearly hadn't changed anything in her absence. Her books were still on the nightstand, her favorite throw blanket still draped over the reading chair in the corner. Even the photo of them on their wedding day still sat on the dresser. Elena changed in the bathroom, emerging in the soft pajamas Maria had left for her. Victor had already claimed his side of the bed, staying carefully on his half of the mattress. "This is weird," Elena said, climbing under the covers. "Extremely weird," Victor agreed, "but also the best night I've had in 3 months." Despite everything, Elena laughed. She reached across the space between them, finding his hand in the darkness. "No pressure, no expectations, we're just sleeping." "Just sleeping," Victor echoed, but the way his hand tightened on hers suggested it meant more than that. Elena closed her eyes, acutely aware of Victor's presence beside her, his warmth, his steady breathing, the familiar comfort of not being alone. For the first time since she'd left, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she belonged. "Victor?" she whispered into the darkness. "Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on me." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "Never. I'll never give up on you." And wrapped in that promise, Elena finally fell into deep, dreamless sleep. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm of rediscovery. Elena woke each morning to find Victor already gone, his side of the bed cold but a fresh cup of herbal tea waiting on her nightstand, caffeine-free, because he'd researched what pregnant women should avoid. He returned each evening by 6, sometimes earlier, as if proving his commitment through punctuality alone. They ate dinner together, talked, watched movies curled on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them gradually shrinking. Victor attended every doctor's appointment, his hand finding hers whenever Dr. Chen moved the ultrasound wand across Elena's growing belly. At 8 weeks, they heard the heartbeat for the first time, a rapid whooshing that made Victor's eyes shine with unshed tears. But beneath the domestic normalcy, tension simmered. They were dancing around the elephant in the room, the unspoken question of what would happen when Elena's month was up. And neither of them was brave enough to address it directly. Until the night everything changed. Elena was in the library, curled up with a book she wasn't really reading, when Victor's phone rang. She heard his voice from the study across the hall, sharp and commanding in a way it never was with her. "I don't care what excuse he's giving. Tell Castellano if he doesn't have my money by Friday, he'll have much bigger problems than debt." Elena's stomach clenched. This was the Victor the rest of Miami knew. Cold, ruthless, dangerous. She'd married him knowing what he was, but hearing it so starkly after weeks of gentle domesticity was jarring. The call ended, and Victor appeared in the library doorway moments later. He took one look at Elena's face, and his expression shuddered. "You heard that." "Hard not to." Elena set down her book. "Is Castellano going to end up hurt?" "Probably." Victor's honesty was brutal. He borrowed $500,000 and invested it badly. Now he's trying to run instead of pay up. That doesn't end well in my world. "Your world," Elena repeated the phrase, tasting its implications. "The world you're trying to leave." "Yes." Victor moved into the room, but didn't sit. "Elena, I've been honest with you about what I am. I can't just flip a switch and become someone else overnight." "I know that." And she did. But knowing it intellectually and confronting it emotionally were different things. "It's just hard sometimes, reconciling the man who brings me tea every morning with the man who threatens people on the phone." "They're the same man." Victor's voice was steady. "I'm not going to apologize for protecting what's mine or enforcing the rules of the business I'm in. But I am trying to build a way out. You have to believe that." Before Elena could respond, Victor's phone rang again. He glanced at the screen and his whole body went rigid. "I need to take this." His voice had gone flat, emotionless. "Stay here." He disappeared back into his study, closing the door firmly behind him. Elena sat frozen, her book forgotten, as unease crawled up her spine. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the sudden tension radiating through the house, in the sharp edge to Victor's voice when he answered. 20 minutes later, the study door opened and Victor emerged. His face was a mask of controlled fury. "Pack a bag," he said. "Enough for a few days." Elena stood. "What's happening?" "Trouble. The kind I need to handle personally." Victor was already moving toward the stairs. I'm taking you somewhere safe first. Victor, talk to me. What kind of trouble? He stopped, turned back to face her. For a moment, the mask slipped and she saw genuine fear beneath the anger. The kind that might put you in danger if you stay here. Please, Elena, trust me on this. Pack a bag and let me get you somewhere secure. Elena's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. The baby will be protected. I promise you. Victor closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. I will never let anything happen to you or our child. But right now, I need you to move fast and ask questions later. The urgency in his voice propelled Elena into action. She ran upstairs and threw clothes into a bag with shaking hands. Her mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. Who would threaten Victor badly enough that he'd move her out of the mansion? What kind of danger were they facing? 10 minutes later, they were in Victor's car, speeding through Miami's nighttime streets. 2 other vehicles followed them. Security, Elena realized. Victor had called in backup. Where are we going? Elena asked. A safe house. It's off the grid. Secure. You'll have guards. Everything you need. Victor's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so goddamn sorry. This is exactly the kind of thing I wanted to keep you away from. Tell me what's happening. Victor was silent for a long moment, navigating traffic with aggressive precision. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with barely controlled rage. There's a man named Marcos Santos. He runs territory in South Beach, and we've had an understanding for years. He stays out of my business, I stay out of his. But he's been expanding, getting greedy. 3 months ago, he started making moves into my territory. 3 months ago, Elena's stomach dropped. Right when I left. Yes. Victor's jaw clenched. He saw my distraction as weakness. Thought with you gone, I'd be vulnerable. I've been handling it quietly, pushing back without starting a war. But tonight he made his position clear. He wants me out of Miami entirely, and he's willing to use any leverage necessary to make that happen. Elena's blood turned to ice. He knows about me. He knows about you. Victor's voice was savage. One of his men must have spotted you at the doctor's office or shopping with Maria. Now Santos is threatening to come after you unless I step aside and let him take over my operations. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes to keep you safe. Victor glanced at her, and the ferocity in his eyes was almost frightening. I don't negotiate with threats, Elena, but I also won't gamble with your life. They pulled up to a nondescript building in a quiet residential area. Victor killed the engine and turned to face her fully. This place is secure. Former military bunker converted to look like a regular apartment building. Guards on every entrance, panic room in the unit. You'll be safe here while I handle Santos. Handle him how? Elena's voice came out smaller than she intended. However I have to. Victor's expression was grim. This ends tonight, one way or another. Terror flooded through Elena. You're going to kill him. If that's what it takes. No hesitation, no remorse. Just cold fact. He threatened you, Elena. Threatened our baby. There are lines you don't cross in my world. And he crossed the biggest one. Elena grabbed his arm. Don't! Victor, please don't do this. There has to be another way. There isn't. Victor covered her hand with his. I know you hate this part of who I am. I know it scares you. But this is how my world works. You show weakness. You invite more attacks. Santos needs to learn that threatening you is a death sentence, or someone else will try the same thing next month. And if you get killed, Elena's voice broke, what happens to me then? To our baby? I won't get killed. Victor's certainty was absolute. I've survived worse than Marco Santos, but I need to know you're protected while I'm handling this. He got out of the car and came around to open her door, ushering her into the building with a hand at the small of her back. The guards nodded at Victor with professional respect as they passed. The apartment he led her to was spacious and comfortable, clearly set up for extended stays. There's food in the kitchen, secure phone line in the bedroom. Maria will come by in the morning with anything else you need. Victor set Elena's bag by the door. Don't leave this building for any reason. Don't answer the door unless it's Maria or someone I send with the proper code word. What's the code word? Primavera. Spring, in Italian. Their wedding had been in spring. Anyone who doesn't say that word, you don't let them in. Understood? Elena nodded, her throat too tight for words. Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I love you, he said against her hair. Whatever happens tonight, you need to know that. I love you more than anything in this world. Then don't go. Elena clung to him. Stay here with me. Let someone else handle it. I can't. Victor pulled back enough to look at her face. This is my responsibility, my world. I have to be the one to set things right. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, pouring 3 months of longing into it. Elena kissed him back with equal desperation, trying to memorize the taste of him, the feel of his hands cradling her face, the solid warmth of his body against hers. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Come back to me, Elena whispered. Promise me you'll come back. I promise. Victor kissed her forehead, then her stomach where their baby was growing. I'll always come back to you. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with terrible finality. Elena stood frozen in the center of the apartment, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway, the elevator ding, the silence that followed. She sank onto the couch, her hands pressed to her stomach, and waited. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Elena tried to read, to watch TV, to sleep, but her mind kept conjuring horrible scenarios. Victor bleeding out in some alley. Marco Santos standing over his body. Her child growing up without a father because she hadn't been able to convince him there was another way. At 2 a.m, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her hand shook as she opened it. Your husband is a stubborn man, Mrs. Moretti. Perhaps you can convince him to be reasonable. Come to the old Santos warehouse on the docks, alone, or we'll send him back to you in pieces. Elena's scream caught in her throat. They had Victor. Somehow, Santos had gotten to him. Every instinct screamed at her to call the guards, to get help. But the text was clear. Come alone, or Victor died. And she believed the threat. Men like Santos didn't bluff. Elena grabbed her jacket and slipped out the apartment door while the guard stationed in the hallway was doing his rounds. The stairwell was empty and she took it down to the basement parking garage where Victor had left a spare car with keys in the visor, an emergency measure he'd shown her years ago. The drive to the docks was a blur of fear and adrenaline. Elena's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard they ached. She knew this was stupid, knew she was doing exactly what Santos wanted, but the thought of Victor hurt, of their child losing its father before it was even born, overrode every rational consideration. The Santos warehouse was a hulking shadow against the night sky, surrounded by shipping containers and abandoned equipment. Elena parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, her heart hammering so hard she felt lightheaded. The main door was unlocked. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and dark, except for harsh industrial lights focused on the center of the floor. Where Victor knelt, hands bound behind his back, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. No! Elena started forward, but 2 men materialized from the shadows, grabbing her arms and hauling her toward the light. Elena, run! Victor's voice was raw with fury and fear. Get out of here now! I'm afraid Mrs. Moretti isn't going anywhere. A man stepped into the light. Mid-40s, expensive suit, cold eyes. Marco Santos. Not until we've had our little chat. He circled Elena like a predator. You're even prettier than the photographs. I can see why Moretti is so infatuated. Tell me, Mrs. Moretti, what's it like being married to Miami's most notorious criminal? Let him go. Elena's voice shook, but held steady. Your fight is with him, not me. Oh, but that's where you're wrong. Santos smiled, and it was the most chilling thing Elena had ever seen. My fight is very much with you. You see, your husband has something I want. Control of the port operations, the shipping routes, the very lucrative business of moving goods in and out of Miami. But he won't negotiate, won't even consider my very generous offer to split the territory. So you thought kidnapping his wife would change his mind? Elena's fear was giving way to anger. That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard. All you've done is guarantee he'll destroy you. Santos laughed. Brave words from a woman in your position. But let's test that theory, shall we? He pulled a gun from his jacket and pressed it to Elena's temple. Victor lunged against his restraints with a roar of pure rage. I will fucking kill you, Santos. I will hunt down everyone you've ever loved and burn your entire organization to the ground. Temper, temper. Santos's gun hand was steady. Here's what's going to happen, Moretti. You're going to sign over control of the port operations to me. Right now, tonight. Or I'm going to put a bullet in your beautiful wife's head and make you watch her die. Don't do it, Victor. Elena's voice was surprisingly calm. Fear had crystallized into clarity. Don't give him anything. He's going to kill us both anyway. Smart girl. Santos's finger moved to the trigger. But wrong. I'm a businessman. I honor my deals. Sign over the ports, Moretti, and I'll let you both walk out of here. He's lying. Elena locked eyes with Victor across the warehouse floor. I know men like him. We're witnesses. He can't let us live. Victor's face was a mask of anguish and calculation. Elena could see him weighing options, running scenarios, looking for any angle that got her out alive. I'll sign. Victor's voice was defeated in a way Elena had never heard. Whatever you want. Just let her go first. Victor. No. Elena, please. The rawness in his voice broke her heart. Please just let me save you. Let me do this one thing right. Santos gestured to one of his men, who produced papers and a pen. They hauled Victor to his feet and dragged him to a makeshift table. Elena watched in horror as he reached for the pen with shaking hands. Victor, don't you dare. Elena struggled against the men holding her. I won't let you give up everything you've built for me. You're worth more than any business. Victor's eyes met hers, and she saw the truth in them. You and our baby are worth everything. He bent over the papers, pen poised to sign away his empire, and Elena made a decision that would change everything. I have a better offer, she said loudly, one that doesn't involve anyone dying or signing anything. Santos turned to her, amused. This should be entertaining. You want the port operations because they're profitable. You think taking them from Victor will make you the most powerful man in Miami. Elena's mind raced, connecting dots from years of watching Victor conduct business, of understanding the rules that governed his world. But what if instead of hostile takeover, we offered you a partnership? Elena. Victor's voice held warning. Shut up and let me talk. Elena glared at him before turning back to Santos. Victor wants to go legitimate. He's been transitioning his businesses, looking for ways to exit the life without starting a war. You want expansion and profit. What if you could have both the ports and legitimacy? Santos's eyes narrowed. I'm listening. Victor signs over operational control of the port businesses to you, but maintains ownership stake. You run the day-to-day, make the decisions. Take the majority of the profits. But everything runs through legitimate corporate structures that Victor's already building. Clean books, legal operations, no risk of federal investigation. That's insane, one of Santos's men muttered. But Santos was thinking. Elena could see it in his expression, the shift from predator to businessman. What's Moretti's incentive? Why would he give me control of his most profitable operations? Because legitimacy is what he wants. Elena's voice gained confidence. He has a child coming. He wants out of this life. You take over the criminal enterprises, transition them to legal ones with his framework, and everyone wins. You get the empire you want. He gets the clean exit he needs, and nobody has to die. The warehouse fell silent, except for the distant sound of water lapping against the docks. Santos studied Elena with new interest. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, Mrs. Moretti. But what's to stop your husband from coming after me once you're safe? A legally binding contract. Elena's words came faster now, the plan crystallizing as she spoke. Victor retains minority ownership, say 30%, but has no operational control. You run everything. All profits are split according to ownership percentages. Everything legal, everything documented. If either party violates the agreement, the penalties are severe enough to bankrupt the offender. You're asking me to trust a contract in our world? Santos laughed, but it lacked conviction. I'm asking you to think strategically. Elena leaned forward as much as her captors would allow. Right now, you have two options. Kill us and take the ports by force, which triggers a war with Victor's allies that will bleed your organization dry, or shoot us both and gain nothing, because Victor would rather die than give you control. Either way, you lose. Or I could force him to sign and kill you anyway. Then you're at war with a man who has nothing left to lose. Elena's voice was ice. Victor would hunt you to the ends of the earth. You'd spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder. Santos circled her slowly, thinking. And this third option you're proposing? You get everything you want, the ports, the power, the profit, without the war, without the risk. Victor gets his way out. I get to raise our child with its father alive and free. Everyone walks away from this warehouse tonight and goes home to their families. Elena, you don't have to do this. Victor's voice was strained. You can't handle this alone. Elena cut him off, still holding Santos's gaze. And you shouldn't have to. I'm your wife, your partner. Let me help fix this. Santos was silent for a long moment. Then, abruptly, he laughed. Genuinely, this time. You've got balls, Mrs. Moretti. I'll give you that. He lowered his gun. Your husband is a lucky man. Is that a yes? Elena's heart pounded. It's a maybe. Santos gestured to his men. Release Moretti. Let's discuss this proposal like civilized people. The men holding Victor cut his bonds. He surged to his feet and crossed the warehouse floor in 3 strides, pulling Elena away from Santos's men and into his arms. Are you insane? He hissed against her hair. You should have stayed at the safe house. So you could die alone? Elena pulled back to look at him. Not a chance. Santos watched them with something almost like respect. Your wife makes a compelling argument, Moretti. What's your take on her proposal? Victor's jaw worked. Elena could see the war in his eyes, pride at her intelligence, fury at the risk she'd taken, and beneath it all, desperate hope that maybe there was a way out that didn't end in blood. The corporate structure is already in place, Victor said slowly. I've been building it for months. Real estate holdings, shipping companies, construction firms, all legitimate, all profitable. If we restructure the port operations through those entities, it could work. And the split? 70-30. Victor's tone left no room for negotiation. You get operational control and majority profits. I retain minority ownership and a seat on the board. All major decisions require unanimous approval. Santos considered. 60-40. And I want final say on day-to-day operations. Deal. Victor held out his hand before Elena could argue for better terms. On one condition, my family is permanently off limits. You come near my wife or child again, and the contract is void, and we settle this the old way. Fair enough. Santos shook Victor's hand. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork tomorrow. We'll finalize everything within the week. Your lawyers and mine. Victor's grip didn't waver. We do this right. Legally binding, no loopholes. Agreed. Santos stepped back, gesturing to his men to stand down. You know, Moretti, when I came here tonight, I expected to either kill you or be killed by you. This outcome is far more profitable for everyone involved. Thank my wife for that. Victor pulled Elena close. She's smarter than both of us combined. Santos gave Elena a small nod of respect. Mrs. Moretti, it's been a pleasure. And congratulations on the baby. May your child inherit your brain instead of your husband's stubbornness. Despite everything, Elena felt a hysterical laugh bubble up. I'll take that as a compliment. The drive back to the safe house was silent. Victor's hands shook on the steering wheel, and Elena could see him struggling with 1,000 different emotions. When they finally pulled into the parking garage, he killed the engine and just sat there, head bowed. I've never been that scared in my life, he said finally. When I saw you walk into that warehouse, when Santos put that gun to your head. I know. Elena reached across the console to take his hand. I was terrified too, but I couldn't let you sacrifice everything for me. Everything I have means nothing without you. Victor turned to look at her, and his eyes were red-rimmed. Elena, you could have died. Our baby could have died. And it would have been my fault. It would have been Santos's fault. Elena cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. You didn't put me in danger, Victor. Your world did, but we found a way through it together. You found a way. Victor's voice cracked. You walked into that warehouse and negotiated a deal that never would have occurred to me because all I could think about was killing anyone who dared threaten you. Well, I'm glad one of us was thinking clearly. Elena tried for lightness, but her own voice shook. Victor, we're okay. We're both okay. And we just solved your biggest problem. You've got your exit strategy now. At what cost? Victor pulled away, running his hands through his hair. Elena, You can't ever do something like that again. Ever. I can't function if I'm terrified you're going to put yourself in danger. Then maybe you understand how I felt for 2 years. The words came out sharper than Elena intended. Living with the knowledge that any day you might not come home. That someone might hurt you to get to me. That's been my reality since the day I married you, Victor. Victor flinched like she'd struck him. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry that loving me means living with that fear. But it's getting better, isn't it? Elena reached for his hand again. Tonight's deal, it's real progress. You'll transition out of the dangerous side of things. Santos takes over the risky operations while you build the legitimate empire. We can actually have a normal life. Is that what you want? Victor's eyes searched hers. A normal life? Because Elena, even going legitimate, I'll never be a completely normal man. There will always be people who know what I was, what I did. Can you live with that? Elena thought about the question seriously. Could she live with being Victor Moretti's wife, knowing his past, knowing the blood he'd spilled to build his empire? Could she raise their child in the shadow of that history? I don't know, she admitted, but I want to try. I want to believe that people can change, that the future doesn't have to look like the past. And watching you tonight, seeing how desperate you were to save me, I realized something. What? That you're already different than you were 3 months ago. The old Victor would have killed Santos without hesitation. But you were willing to give up everything, to sacrifice your entire empire, just to keep me safe. That's not the action of a heartless criminal. That's the action of a good man trying to protect his family. Victor pulled her across the console and into his lap, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. I love you, he said against her neck. I love you so much it terrifies me. And I swear to you, Elena, I'm going to be worthy of that. I'm going to build us a life where you and our baby never have to be scared. I believe you. And she did. For the first time since she'd walked out 3 months ago, Elena truly believed they could make this work. They sat there in the car for a long time, holding each other in the darkness of the parking garage. Two people who'd been to hell and back finally finding their way home. The week that followed the warehouse confrontation passed in a whirlwind of lawyers, contracts, and tense negotiations. Victor's study became command central, filled with men in expensive suits arguing over percentages and liability clauses, while Elena watched from the sidelines, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly. She was 12 weeks now, finally past the first trimester danger zone. Doctor. Chen had pronounced both mother and baby healthy, despite the stress of recent events, though she'd given Victor a stern lecture about keeping his pregnant wife away from armed standoffs. The baby's heartbeat is strong, Dr. Chen had said, moving the ultrasound wand across Elena's stomach. But Mrs. Moretti needs rest, not excitement. Do you understand, Mr. Moretti? Victor had nodded solemnly, but Elena had seen the ghost of a smile at his lips. They both knew rest wasn't really an option until the Santos deal was finalized. On the 5th day of negotiations, Marco Santos himself arrived at the mansion. Elena watched from the library window as his car pulled through the gates, flanked by security. The irony wasn't lost on her. A week ago, this man had held a gun to her head. Now he was here for a business dinner. You don't have to join us, Victor said from the doorway. He changed into a fresh suit, every inch the powerful businessman. I can handle this alone. We're partners, remember? Elena stood, smoothing down the emerald dress Maria had laid out for her. Besides, this was my idea. I should see it through. Victor crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. Have I mentioned lately how incredible you are? Not in the last few hours, Elena smiled against his chest. You're slipping. Then let me remedy that. Victor tilted her chin up, his eyes intense. You're the most brilliant, brave, infuriating woman I've ever met. You terrify me and amaze me in equal measure, and I fall more in love with you every single day. Elena's breath caught. Victor, I mean it. His thumb traced her jawline. 3 months ago, I thought I'd lost you forever. Now you're here, carrying our child, saving my life and my business with that incredible mind of yours. I don't deserve you, Elena, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to. Before Elena could respond, the doorbell chimed. Victor pressed a quick kiss to her forehead and stepped back, his expression shifting to something more guarded. Showtime. he murmured. Dinner was surreal. Elena sat at one end of the long dining table with Victor at the other, Marco Santos between them, like this was a normal business arrangement rather than a deal born from kidnapping and threats. The food was exquisite. Maria had outdone herself, and the conversation stayed carefully neutral. Weather, real estate markets, the upcoming port expansion project that would now be Santos's responsibility. Your wife has excellent instincts, Santos said over dessert, raising his wine glass toward Elena. She sipped her sparkling water and nodded acknowledgement. That partnership structure you proposed? My accountants say it could increase profits by 30% within the first year while cutting legal exposure by half. I'm glad it's working out for everyone, Elena said carefully. More than working out. Santos leaned back in his chair. I've been in this business 20 years, and I've never seen a cleaner transition of power. Usually these things end in blood. Your solution was elegant. My wife specializes in finding elegant solutions to impossible problems, Victor said, his eyes on Elena. It's one of her many talents. After Santos left, contracts signed, lawyers satisfied, handshakes exchanged, Victor and Elena stood together in the foyer watching the taillights disappear down the drive. It's really over, Elena said quietly. The dangerous part of your business, you're out. Not completely. Victor's honesty was refreshing. I still have connections, obligations, but the day-to-day operations, the violence, the constant threat, yes, that's Santos's problem now. I'm just a businessman with diverse holdings and a very pregnant wife to take care of. Elena turned to face him. What happens now? Now? Victor pulled her close. Now we focus on us, on building the life we want, on preparing for this baby. His hand splayed across her stomach, which was just beginning to show a gentle curve. On being a family. I'd like that. Elena rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Victor, I've been thinking... Dangerous words, he teased. Shut up and listen. But she was smiling. My month is almost up. The month I asked for to decide if this could work. Victor went very still. And I don't need the rest of it. Elena pulled back to look at him. I know my answer. I want this. I want us. I want to rebuild our marriage and raise our baby together and figure out how to navigate this complicated, messy, beautiful thing we have. The hope that flooded Victor's expression was almost painful to witness. Are you sure? Elena, you don't have to decide now. Take the full month. Take longer if you need. I'm sure. She cupped his face in her hands. I love you, Victor Moretti. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you'd betrayed me. And I want to come home, really home, not as a guest in the spare room, but as your wife. Victor's response was to kiss her senseless, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around in the foyer like they were teenagers instead of adults, navigating complex criminal to legitimate business transitions. When he finally set her down, both were breathless and grinning. Move back into our room tonight, Victor said. Please, I've missed falling asleep next to you. Okay. Elena's answer was simple, but it felt like a vow. That night, Elena unpacked her belongings from the guest room and moved them back into the master suite. It felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd lost 3 months ago. Victor helped, carrying boxes and rehanging her clothes in the massive closet with reverent care. I never touched your side, he admitted, gesturing to the half of the closet that had remained exactly as Elena left it. Couldn't bring myself to. It felt too final. Elena surveyed the space, her shoes still lined up on their rack, her jewelry box still sitting on the built-in dresser, even the scarf she'd been meaning to return to the department store still draped over a hook. You're a sentimental fool, she said softly. Only about you. Victor wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hand settling on her small bump. Only ever about you? They fell asleep that night, tangled together in the center of their enormous bed, and for the first time in 3 months, neither had nightmares. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Victor was home more, delegating operations to Santos and his own management team. He attended every prenatal appointment, asked 1,000 questions about baby gear, and started planning nursery renovations with an intensity that made Elena laugh. It's one baby, Victor, not a royal heir. It's our baby. Victor looked up from the paint swatches he'd been studying. And I want everything to be perfect. Nothing is ever perfect, Elena reminded him gently, but she appreciated his enthusiasm even as she vetoed his more extravagant ideas. No, they didn't need a custom mural that cost $15,000. Yes, a regular crib would work just fine instead of the handcrafted Italian one he'd found online. But there were still moments when the weight of Victor's past crashed into their carefully constructed present. Like the afternoon Elena found him in his study, staring at a file folder with an expression of profound guilt. "What's wrong?" she asked from the doorway. Victor looked up and she saw the torment in his eyes. "Do you know what I did to build this empire?" Elena's stomach tightened. "Victor? No, you should know." He stood, crossing to hand her the folder. "You should know exactly what kind of man you married." Elena opened the file with shaking hands. Inside were police reports, newspaper clippings, grainy photographs, evidence of violence, intimidation, crimes that made her blood run cold. She saw Victor's name again and again, saw the destruction he'd caused in building his power base. "I've hurt people," Victor said quietly. "Ruined lives. Made decisions that put money and power above human decency. And now I'm about to be a father, and I don't know how to reconcile what I've done with the man I'm trying to become." Elena set the folder down carefully. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because you deserve to know the truth, all of it." Victor's voice was raw. "Before you commit to this life completely, you should understand what you're getting into. The man I was, the things I did, they don't just disappear because I've signed some contracts." "I know that." Elena moved closer to him. "Victor, I'm not naive. I knew what you were when I married you. Maybe not the specifics, but I knew you weren't innocent. Knowing in theory and seeing the evidence are different things." "Yes, they are." Elena picked up one of the photos. A younger Victor, harder around the edges, standing over someone who'd clearly just been beaten. "This man scares me. But he's not the man standing in front of me now." "Isn't he?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "Elena, I threatened to hunt down and kill everyone Santos loved just last week. That violent man is still inside me. To protect me and our baby." Elena set the photo down. "Victor, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that your past doesn't matter, because it does. But I'm also not going to condemn you for things you did in a world I don't fully understand. What I care about is who you are now and who you're trying to become. And if I can't become that better person, if the violence is too ingrained," Elena took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her, "then we'll figure it out together. But I believe in you, Victor. I believe you can change because I've already seen you changing. The man who paid for Lily's mother's treatment, who followed me for months just to keep me safe, who was willing to give up everything to save my life. That's not a monster. That's a man capable of tremendous love and sacrifice." Victor's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," Elena smiled. "But you're stuck with me anyway." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "I'm going to make this right," he said against her hair. "The people I've hurt, the damage I've done, I'm going to find a way to balance the scales." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I have some ideas." Victor pulled back, and Elena saw determination replacing the guilt in his expression. "What if we started a foundation? Use some of our money to help the communities I've harmed?" Elena's heart swelled. "What kind of foundation?" "Education, maybe. Job training for people trying to escape the life I profited from. Support for families affected by violence." Victor was warming to the idea now. "We could fund programs that give people alternatives. Opportunities I never offered when I was just taking from them." "I love that idea." Elena's mind was already racing with possibilities. "We could start in the neighborhoods most affected by gang activity, offer scholarships, mentorship programs, small business loans. You'd help me run it?" Victor's hope was almost childlike. "Of course I would. We're partners, remember?" Elena grinned. "Besides, someone needs to keep you from trying to throw too much money at every problem." "I do not throw money at problems," Victor protested. Elena raised an eyebrow. "The $15,000 nursery mural says otherwise." Despite the heavy conversation, Victor laughed. It was a sound Elena had missed desperately during their separation. Genuine, unguarded joy. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning, sketching out ideas for the foundation on legal pads. What had started as a conversation about Victor's guilt transformed into something hopeful, a roadmap for redemption built on action rather than regret. As the sun set outside the study windows, Elena felt something shift between them. They weren't just rebuilding their marriage anymore. They were building something entirely new, a partnership that acknowledged the past while actively working to create a better future. "We should celebrate," Victor said as they finished outlining their initial foundation goals. "Celebrate what?" "You, me, this." Victor gestured at the pages of notes scattered across his desk. "The fact that we survived 3 months apart and came back stronger, that we're having a baby, that we found a way to turn my criminal empire into something legitimate, that you're the most incredible woman in the world, and somehow you choose to love me anyway." Elena laughed. "That's a lot to celebrate. So we'll need a lot of champagne." Victor paused. "Well, I'll have champagne. You'll have sparkling cider and complain about it." "I wasn't going to complain. Elena, you've complained about sparkling cider at every event we've attended in the last month." "Because it's not the same." But she was smiling. "Fine. You have champagne. I'll suffer through my inferior beverage, and we'll toast to new beginnings." They ended up on the terrace overlooking the gardens, the Miami skyline glittering in the distance. Victor produced an expensive bottle of champagne and poured sparkling cider for Elena with exaggerated ceremony. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. "To second chances," Elena added. "To our family." Victor's hand found her stomach, his touch gentle and reverent. They clinked glasses and drank, the moment feeling suspended in time, perfect and fragile and full of promise. "I have something for you," Victor said suddenly, setting down his glass and reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, and Elena's heart stuttered. "Victor, we're already married." "I know." He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond necklace, delicate and elegant. "This isn't an engagement ring. It's something else. Something I should have given you a long time ago." He moved behind her, lifting her hair to fasten the necklace around her throat. The diamonds caught the moonlight, sparkling against her skin. "Do you remember what you said to me on our wedding day?" Victor asked, his hands resting on her shoulders. "Right before we walked down the aisle." Elena thought back to that day 2 years ago, to the nervous girl she'd been. "I said I was scared. And I said I would never give you a reason to be." Victor turned her to face him. "Then I broke that promise by keeping secrets, by letting my work come between us, by not fighting hard enough for us when you left. This necklace is a new promise, Elena. I will never take you for granted again. I will never let you doubt how much you mean to me. And I will spend every day proving that choosing me was the right decision." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "You already have, Victor. Every day since you found me in that parking garage, you've shown me who you really are. And I love what I see." They kissed under the stars. Two people who'd been broken apart and forged back together into something stronger. When they finally pulled apart, Elena rested her head on Victor's chest and watched the city lights below. "I have something to tell you," she said quietly. Victor's arms tightened around her. "What is it?" "I went to the doctor yesterday for an additional checkup." Elena felt her smile growing. "Doctor, Chen wanted to do another ultrasound because she thought she heard something unusual during the last visit." Victor pulled back, concern etching his features. "Is something wrong? Is the baby—" "The baby is fine." Elena couldn't hold back her grin any longer. "Babies, actually, plural." For a moment, Victor just stared at her. Then understanding dawned, and his expression went through a rapid series of changes: shock, disbelief, wonder, and finally pure joy. "Twins?" His voice cracked on the word. "We're having twins?" "We're having twins." Elena laughed at his stunned expression. "Dr. Chen said the second heartbeat was hiding behind the first, which is why we didn't catch it earlier. But there are definitely 2 babies in there." Victor dropped to his knees, pressing his face to Elena's stomach with something like reverence. "2 babies," he whispered. 2 perfect, healthy babies. "We're going to need a bigger nursery," Elena said, running her fingers through his hair. And two of everything. And possibly a nanny because I don't know how we're going to handle two newborns alone. Victor looked up at her, his eyes shining. We'll figure it out. Together. Just like we've figured out everything else. Together, Elena agreed, pulling him to his feet. Always together. They stood there on the terrace, wrapped in each other's arms, as Miami hummed with life below them. Somewhere out there, Marco Santos was running the empire Victor had built. Somewhere out there, people were making deals and breaking laws and living the life Victor was leaving behind. But here, in this moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the woman in Victor's arms, the two lives growing inside her, and the future they were building together. I never thought I'd have this, Victor said quietly. A real family, a clean life, a chance to be something more than what my father made me. You always had the chance, Elena replied. You just needed someone to believe you could take it. And you believe in me? Elena pulled back to look at him, this man who'd been a stranger, then a lover, then a husband, then almost lost forever. This man who'd tracked her down and fought for their marriage and was now willing to dismantle everything he'd built for a chance at redemption. I believe in us, she said, and that's enough. Victor kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. When they finally went inside, hand in hand, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Real solid hope that they could make this work. That the past didn't have to define the future. That love, combined with determination and honesty, could overcome almost anything. Later that night, as they lay in bed with Victor's hand resting on her growing belly, Elena thought about the journey that had brought them here. The betrayal that wasn't, the separation that had nearly destroyed them, the warehouse confrontation that had changed everything. What are you thinking about? Victor murmured in the darkness. How lucky we are, Elena said, that we got a second chance, that we didn't give up on each other, even when it would have been easier. Giving up on you has never been an option. Victor pulled her closer. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Elena. You and these babies, you're my whole world. Elena smiled against his chest. Good, because you're stuck with us now. Exactly where I want to be. They fell asleep like that, intertwined and at peace, ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow would bring. Together. The foundation became Elena's obsession over the following months. While her belly swelled with twins, she threw herself into building something meaningful from the ashes of Victor's former empire. They named it Primavera, spring, renewal, new beginnings. The office space Victor secured was in one of Miami's most neglected neighborhoods, a deliberate choice. Elena spent her days interviewing potential staff, designing programs, and meeting with community leaders who were understandably skeptical of a crime boss's sudden philanthropic turn. Mrs. Moretti, one community organizer said during their third meeting, her arms crossed defensively. With all due respect, your husband spent years making money off the suffering in this neighborhood. Now he wants to play savior? Elena, 6 months pregnant and exhausted, met the woman's gaze steadily. You're right to be skeptical, but I'm not asking you to trust my husband's motives. I'm asking you to trust mine. I grew up in poverty. My mother worked herself to death trying to give me a better life. I know what it's like to need help that never comes. The organizer's expression softened slightly. And what makes this different from every other rich person's guilt project? Nothing, if we do it wrong. Elena pulled out the foundation's mission statement, which she'd written herself. That's why I'm here talking to you instead of just throwing money at the problem. I want to know what this community actually needs, not what I think it needs. Help me build something that matters. By the end of that meeting, Elena had gained not just the organizer's cautious support, but also her first board member. Maria Gonzalez became the foundation's community liaison. Her connections and credibility opening doors Elena's last name had closed. Victor watched this transformation with something like awe. His wife, who'd once been content to stay out of his business affairs, had become a force of nature. She negotiated with contractors, challenged bureaucrats, and refused to accept anything less than excellence from everyone involved in Primavera's work. You're magnificent, he told her one evening as she reviewed scholarship applications at the dining table, her swollen feet propped on a chair. I'm enormous, Elena corrected, gesturing at her belly. These babies are running out of room. Magnificently enormous. Victor knelt beside her chair, pressing a kiss to her stomach. How are my girls today? They'd learned the twins' sex at the 20-week ultrasound. 2 daughters. Victor had cried openly in Dr. Chen's office, overcome with emotion at the thought of raising girls in a world he was trying to make safer. Your girls are apparently training for soccer, Elena said as one of the twins kicked vigorously. This one's been doing somersaults all afternoon. Victor's hand followed the movement, his expression softening. They're strong, like their mother. They're going to be spoiled rotten by their father, Elena countered. I saw the receipts for the nursery furniture, Victor. We talked about this. We talked about not spending $15,000 on a mural, Victor said innocently. We never discussed furniture budgets. Because I assumed you'd use common sense. Common sense says my daughters deserve the best of everything. Elena sighed, but she was smiling. This was a familiar argument, one they had at least weekly as Victor's excitement about fatherhood manifested in increasingly extravagant purchases. The nursery now contained 2 state-of-the-art cribs, a rocking chair that probably cost more than Elena's first car, and enough baby clothes to outfit a small army. We need to talk about names, Elena said, changing the subject. We can't keep calling them Baby A and Baby B. Victor settled into the chair beside her, his expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about that. What about Sophia? For one of them. Sophia Moretti. Elena tested the name, feeling how it fit. I like it. It's beautiful. What about the other one? I was hoping you'd choose. Victor took her hand. Something that means something to you. Elena thought about her mother, about the strength and sacrifice that had defined her short life. Isabella. My mother's middle name, Sophia and Isabella Moretti. Perfect. Victor lifted her hand to his lips. Absolutely perfect. The conversation was interrupted by Victor's phone buzzing. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. It's Santos. Elena tensed. The partnership had been running smoothly for months, but she'd never fully relaxed around Marco Santos. The man who'd once held a gun to her head was now her husband's business partner, and the cognitive dissonance never quite faded. Take it, she said. I'll finish reviewing these applications. Victor stepped into his study, and Elena tried to focus on the scholarship essays in front of her. Each one was a story of struggle and determination, kids trying to escape the same kind of poverty and violence that had once funded Victor's empire. She was deep into a particularly moving essay about a girl who wanted to become a nurse when Victor returned, his face pale. What's wrong? Elena set down her pen immediately. Santos is dead. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless in the way it got when he was processing shock. Shot outside his office an hour ago. His second-in-command called to let me know. Elena's hand flew to her stomach protectively. Who did it? They don't know yet. Could be retaliation from one of his enemies. Could be internal power struggle. Victor sank into his chair, running his hands through his hair. But there's a problem, Elena. The partnership agreement has a clause. If Santos dies without a designated successor, operational control reverts to me. The implications crashed over Elena like a wave. No, we got out. You got out. The lawyers are looking into it, seeing if there's any way to dissolve the partnership entirely, but right now, technically, I just inherited back everything I signed over to Santos. Victor looked at her, and she saw the fear in his eyes. I'm right back where I started. Elena's mind raced. They'd worked so hard to build their new life, to create distance from Victor's criminal past. The foundation was just getting off the ground, the twins were due in 3 months, and now this. There has to be another way, she said firmly. We didn't come this far to slide backward. I'm open to suggestions. Victor's voice held a note of desperation. Because right now, Santos's entire organization is leaderless, and nature abhors a vacuum. If I don't step in, someone else will, and the transition could turn bloody. Elena stood, pacing despite her ungainly bulk. What if we accelerate the legitimization process? Take everything Santos was running and immediately transition it to legal operations? That would take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, there are people counting on those operations for their livelihoods, legal and otherwise. Then we find someone else to take over the illegal parts. Someone who can maintain stability while we transition everything else. Elena stopped pacing, struck by a sudden thought. What about Santos's second-in-command, the one who called you? Diego Martinez? Victor considered. He's capable, has Santos's people's respect, but he doesn't have the capital or connections to take full control. So we back him. Elena's plan was crystallizing as she spoke. We provide the financial support and political connections he needs to take over, but we structure it so we have no operational involvement. He runs the day-to-day, we provide stability during the transition, and we use that leverage to push for rapid legitimization of everything that can be legitimized. Victor stared at her. You want to essentially do the same deal we did with Santos, but with his replacement. No, I want to do it better. Elena moved back to the table, grabbing a legal pad and starting to sketch out ideas. This time, we build in mandatory timelines for going legitimate. Every operation has to transition to legal business within 2 years or be dissolved. We make Martinez a partner in the legitimate ventures, so he has incentive to make the transition work. And we establish clear exit terms, so when everything is legal, we can walk away completely. And if Martinez doesn't want that deal, then we find someone who does. Elena met his eyes. Victor, we have leverage right now. We have the money, the connections, the legitimacy that whoever takes over will need. We can dictate terms in a way you couldn't when Santos had a gun to my head. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his expression shifting from despair to consideration to something like hope. It could work. It would be risky, but it could work. Everything we've done has been risky. Elena reached across the table to take his hand. But we've made it work every time. We can do this. The next week was a blur of meetings and negotiations. Diego Martinez turned out to be more reasonable than Santos had been, perhaps chastened by his former boss's violent end. He listened to Elena's proposal with careful attention, asking smart questions and pushing back on terms that were too restrictive. 2 years is aggressive, Martinez said during their third meeting. Some of these operations are deeply entrenched. Transitioning them that fast could cause instability. Then we build in phases, Elena countered. She was 7 months pregnant now, her energy flagging but her mind sharp. Year 1, we transition the most straightforward operations, the shipping companies, the real estate holdings, anything that's already quasi-legitimate. Year 2, we tackle the harder stuff with the infrastructure we've built. And the operations that can't be legitimized? Dissolved, Victor said firmly. Martinez, I'm not trying to put you out of business. I'm trying to build you a better business, one that doesn't end with you shot outside your office like Santos. The blunt words hung in the air. Martinez leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. And after 2 years, when everything is legitimate, what then? Then you buy us out. Elena slid a folder across the table. These are the terms. Fair market value for our ownership stake, paid out over 5 years. You get full control of a legitimate, profitable enterprise. We get our complete exit. Martinez reviewed the terms carefully. Finally, he looked up and extended his hand. You have a deal, Mrs. Moretti. Your husband is lucky to have such a brilliant partner. Don't I know it? Victor said, his hand finding Elena's under the table and squeezing. With the Martinez deal in place, Elena threw herself back into Primavera's work with renewed energy. The foundation was expanding faster than she'd anticipated, their scholarship program already supporting 50 students and their job training initiatives helping dozens more. But the real breakthrough came when Elena proposed something that made even Victor nervous. I want to hire people with criminal records, she announced at a foundation board meeting. People who've served their time and are trying to rebuild their lives but can't get jobs because of their past. Maria Gonzalez nodded enthusiastically, but one of the other board members, a banker Victor had recruited, looked skeptical. That's a significant liability, Mrs. Moretti. So is letting talented, motivated people fall back into crime because legitimate society won't give them a chance, Elena countered. We do background checks, we have probationary periods, we provide support and oversight. But we also provide opportunity. Isn't that what Primavera is supposed to be about? She's right. Victor's voice carried quiet authority. I know better than anyone how hard it is to leave that life behind. If we're serious about breaking cycles of poverty and violence, we have to be willing to take risks on people who are trying to change. The program launched 2 months later with 5 hires, men and women who'd served time for nonviolent offenses, and were now working in Primavera's administrative offices, job training programs, and community outreach. Elena made a point of learning each person's story, of understanding what had led them to crime and what they hoped to build now. One of those hires was a young man named Jason, who'd done 3 years for drug dealing and was now helping run Primavera's mentorship program. Elena was reviewing his first month's performance reports when her water broke. "Victor," she called from her office, looking down at the puddle spreading across the floor. "Victor, it's time." The controlled chaos that followed would have been funny if Elena hadn't been contracting every few minutes. Victor appeared within seconds, phone already in hand, calling Dr. Chen. Maria materialized to grab Elena's hospital bag, already packed and waiting for this moment. Jason and 2 other staff members cleared a path to the car while fielding the calls that kept coming in. "We've got this, Mrs. Moretti," Jason assured her as Victor helped her into the car. "Don't worry about anything here, just focus on those babies." The drive to the hospital was a blur of contractions and Victor's steady voice talking her through breathing exercises he'd learned in the birthing classes Elena had insisted they attend. By the time they arrived, Elena was in active labor with both twins. Dr. Chen met them at the entrance with a wheelchair and a calm smile. "Right on time. 37 weeks is perfect for twins." The next 6 hours were intense. Elena had opted for a natural birth despite the risks with twins, and Dr. Chen had supported her choice while making sure they were prepared for any complications. Victor stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand through contractions, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement when the pain made her want to give up. "I can't do this," Elena gasped during a particularly brutal contraction. "Victor, I can't." "Yes, you can." His voice was absolute certainty. "You're the strongest person I know, Elena. You've survived everything life has thrown at you. You can do this." "Easy for you to say," she panted. "You're not the one. Oh God." "I know, baby, I know. But you're almost there. Dr. Chen says Sophia is crowning. Just a little more." Sophia entered the world at 11:47 p.m., screaming her displeasure at being evicted from her comfortable home. Victor cut the umbilical cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as the nurses cleaned their first daughter and placed her on Elena's chest. "She's perfect," Elena sobbed, looking down at the tiny, wrinkled, beautiful creature in her arms. "Victor, she's perfect." "Just like her mother." Victor kissed Elena's forehead. "You did it, love. You did it." But they weren't done yet. Isabella, true to the personality she'd shown in utero, took her time. Another hour of labor, another round of pushing, and then she was there. Smaller than her sister, quieter, but equally perfect. Victor held both daughters while the doctors attended to Elena, his expression one of such profound wonder that it made Elena's heart ache even through her exhaustion. This man, this former crime boss who'd built an empire on fear and violence, cradled his newborn daughters like they were made of spun glass. "Hello, Sophia. Hello, Isabella," he murmured. "I'm your daddy, and I promise you both. I'm going to spend every day of my life making sure you grow up in a world better than the one I came from." Elena watched through heavy-lidded eyes as Victor made his vows to their daughters, and she knew with absolute certainty that he would keep them. This was why they'd fought so hard to change, to build something better. Not just for themselves, but for these 2 tiny humans who deserved a father they could be proud of. The next few days passed in a haze of sleepless nights, endless feedings, and the particular chaos of newborn twins. Victor proved surprisingly adept at diaper changes and middle-of-the-night bottle preparation, often insisting Elena rest while he handled both babies. "You need sleep," he said on the 3rd night home when Elena tried to get up for the 4th time. "I've got them." "You have a business to run," Elena protested weakly. "I have a family to take care of. The business can wait." Victor settled into the rocking chair with Isabella while Sophia slept in her bassinet. "Besides, I'm not missing this. They're only this small once." Visitors came in waves. Lily brought enough baby clothes to outfit a daycare. Maria cried over both girls and immediately declared herself their honorary grandmother. Even Diego Martinez sent an enormous flower arrangement and a card congratulating them on their beautiful family. But the most surprising visit came 2 weeks after the twins were born. Elena was in the nursery feeding Sophia when Maria announced they had an unexpected guest. "Mrs. Santos is here," Maria said quietly. "Marco's widow. She's asking to see you and Mr. Victor." Elena's stomach clenched. She'd never met Carmen Santos, had only heard about her in passing. Give me 10 minutes to finish feeding Sophia, then show her to the living room. Victor appeared in the doorway, clearly having heard. You don't have to see her. I can handle this. No. Elena shifted Sophia to her shoulder for burping. We see her together. Carmen Santos was an elegant woman in her 50s, dressed in black, her eyes red from crying. She stood when Victor and Elena entered, her hands twisting a handkerchief nervously. Mrs. Santos, Victor said carefully, I'm sorry for your loss. Are you? Carmen's voice was sharp. My husband died because of his association with you, Mr. Moretti. Elena felt Victor tense beside her, but his voice remained calm. Your husband died because someone in his organization decided to make a play for power. I had nothing to do with it. I know that. Carmen's shoulders slumped. I'm sorry. I'm not here to accuse you. I'm here to... She broke off, pressing the handkerchief to her eyes. I'm here to thank you. The words hung in the air, unexpected and confusing. Elena glanced at Victor, who looked equally baffled. Thank us? Elena asked gently. For giving Marco a chance to go legitimate. Carmen sat heavily on the couch. He never told me the details of your deal, but I knew. I knew he was working with you to clean up the business. And in those last few months, I saw a change in him. He was excited about the future instead of constantly looking over his shoulder. He talked about legitimate business ventures, about building something our children could be proud of. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He didn't get to see it through. But the fact that he tried, that he wanted to change, that means everything to me. So thank you. Thank you for giving him that hope, even if it came too late. Elena found herself moving to sit beside Carmen, taking the older woman's hand. I'm so sorry you lost him. I know that doesn't help, but I am. You have beautiful daughters, Carmen said, glancing at the photo of the twins on the mantel. Love them, protect them, and make sure they never have to live the life I lived, wondering if every phone call would be the one telling me my husband was dead. We will, Victor said quietly. That's why we're doing all of this, so our daughters grow up in a different world. Carmen stood, collecting herself. Marco left me well provided for. I'd like to make a donation to your foundation. In his name, maybe some good can come from all of this. That's very generous, Elena said. We'd be honored. After Carmen left, Elena and Victor sat together in the quiet living room. Sophia and Isabella were both napping, giving them a rare moment of peace. She's right, you know, Victor said finally. About the life she lived. That could have been you, Elena. Still could be, if something happens to me. Nothing's going to happen to you. Elena leaned against his shoulder. We're building something different now. Something safer. I hope so. Victor's arm came around her. I want to be here for every moment. First steps, first words, first days of school. I want to walk our daughters down the aisle someday and meet our grandchildren. I want to grow old with you and look back on all of this as the past we overcame, not the present we're trapped in. Then we make that happen. Elena tilted her face up to kiss him. Together. The months that followed were a beautiful blur of exhaustion and joy. Sophia and Isabella grew from tiny newborns into chubby, smiling babies with distinct personalities. Sophia was bold and loud, demanding attention with lusty cries. Isabella was quieter, more observant, but just as determined to get what she wanted. Primavera flourished beyond Elena's wildest dreams. The scholarship program expanded to support 200 students. The job training initiative launched 3 new programs. And the Second Chance hiring program became a model that other organizations started copying. Elena found herself increasingly in demand as a speaker, sharing Primavera's story at conferences and fundraisers. She talked openly about her husband's past, about the choice to transform ill-gotten gains into community support, about believing in redemption and second chances. People ask me how I can work with my husband's money when I know where it came from, she said at one event, her voice steady and clear. And my answer is that sitting on that money and doing nothing would be worse than the crimes that earned it. Yes, it's blood money, but we're using it to stop the bleeding, to heal the wounds, to prevent the next generation from having to make the same choices Victor's generation did. The speech went viral, shared across social media, and picked up by national news outlets. Suddenly, Primavera wasn't just a local foundation. It was a national conversation about redemption, reform, and the responsibility of those who profited from crime to give back to the communities they harmed. Not everyone was supportive. Elena received death threats from people who thought she was glorifying crime. She got hate mail from people who thought criminals didn't deserve second chances. But she also received letters from formerly incarcerated people thanking her for seeing their humanity, from mothers in struggling neighborhoods thanking her for giving their children hope, from people who'd been where Victor was and found inspiration in his transformation. Through it all, Victor supported her. He handled the security concerns, vetted the threats, and made sure Elena and their daughters were protected. But he also stepped back and let Elena be the face of Primavera, understanding that his presence would always carry complicated weight. "You're better at this than I ever could be," he told her after one particularly successful fundraiser. "You connect with people in a way I never learned to. They trust you." "They trust us," Elena corrected. "This only works because we're in it together." The twins' first birthday arrived faster than Elena thought possible. They threw a party in the mansion's gardens, inviting everyone who'd been part of their journey: Lily, Maria, Dr. Chen, the Primavera staff, even Diego Martinez and his family. Elena watched Sofia and Isabella smash their birthday cakes with enthusiastic glee, their faces covered in frosting, and felt her eyes well up with tears. A year ago, she'd been terrified and unsure, wondering if she and Victor could really make their marriage work. Now she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. "Happy?" Victor asked, sliding his arm around her waist. Deliriously. Elena leaned into him. "Sometimes I think about where we were 18 months ago. Me hiding in that awful apartment, you following me from a distance, both of us miserable and alone. It feels like a different lifetime." It was a different lifetime. Victor kissed her temple. "We're different people now." "Better people," Elena agreed. "Thanks to you." Victor turned her to face him. "Elena, everything good in my life traces back to you. You saw something in me worth saving when everyone else just saw a criminal. You believed I could change when I didn't believe it myself. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to be better. I don't have words for what that means to me." "Try," Elena said, smiling through her tears. "I love you." Victor cupped her face in his hands. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You're my partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, and the person who saved me from myself. And I promise you, Elena Moretti, I will spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me wasn't misplaced." Elena pulled him down into a kiss, tasting salt from her own tears and sweetness from the birthday cake they'd both sampled. Around them, their friends and family celebrated, their daughters laughed, and the future stretched out bright and full of possibility. 2 years later, Elena stood on a stage at the opening of Primavera's 5th community center. The building had been funded entirely by the foundation and would house after-school programs, job training, and community resources in one of Miami's most underserved neighborhoods. Victor stood beside her, their daughters, now 3 years old, holding each parent's hand. Sofia and Isabella had insisted on wearing matching dresses for the occasion, though Sofia had already gotten dirt on hers from exploring the playground outside. "This center represents everything Primavera stands for," Elena said into the microphone, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "Second chances, community investment, the belief that where you come from doesn't have to determine where you're going. It's funded by money that once fueled crime and violence, but now it's going to fuel education, opportunity, and hope." She paused, looking down at her daughters, then at Victor. "My husband and I know something about second chances. We've built our entire lives on them, and it's our privilege to extend those same chances to this community." The crowd erupted in applause. As Elena cut the ribbon alongside community leaders, she caught Victor's eye and saw her own emotions reflected there: pride, gratitude, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing they'd done something that mattered. That evening, after the girls were in bed and the house was quiet, Elena and Victor sat in their favorite spot on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The Miami skyline glittered in the distance, and somewhere out there the community center they'd opened that morning was standing as a testament to what redemption could look like. "I got a call from Martinez today," Victor said, breaking the comfortable silence. "He's ready to buy us out, 6 months ahead of schedule." Elena's head whipped toward him. "Really? Really? Every operation is now completely legitimate. Shipping, real estate, construction, all of it. He's built a successful business empire, and he wants full ownership." Victor pulled out a folder. "These are the final terms. Fair market value for our stake, payable over the agreed-upon timeline. Once we sign, we're done. Completely out. Elena took the folder with shaking hands. This was it, the final step in the journey they'd started in that warehouse 2 years ago. The moment when Victor would be fully, legally, irrevocably separated from his criminal past. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Relieved, grateful, a little scared, if I'm honest. That empire was my identity for so long. Walking away from it completely is terrifying, Elena finished. I know. But Victor, look at everything you've built to replace it. Primavera, our family, the legitimate businesses you're running. You're not walking away from an identity. You're walking away from a past that doesn't fit who you are anymore. Who am I now? The question was genuine, vulnerable. Elena set down the folder and took his hands. You're Victor Moretti. Husband, father, philanthropist, businessman. You're the man who pays for strangers' medical bills and cries during children's movies. You're the person who believed redemption was possible and fought like hell to prove it. That's who you are now. Victor's eyes shone in the dim light. When did you become so wise? I married a complicated man. I had to get wise to keep up. Elena smiled. Sign the papers, Victor. Close this chapter completely. We've earned the right to move forward without looking back. They signed the documents that night, witnessed by their lawyers via video call. When it was done, Victor set down the pen and let out a long breath. It's over, he said wonderingly. It's really over. No. Elena moved to sit on his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. It's not over. It's just beginning. She was right. In the months and years that followed, their lives continued to evolve and grow. Sophia and Isabella started school, charming their teachers and driving their parents crazy with their endless energy. Primavera expanded to 6 cities, each center following the model Elena had pioneered in Miami. Victor threw himself into running his legitimate business interests and discovered he was better at legal enterprise than he'd ever been at crime. They faced challenges, of course. Victor's past never fully disappeared. There were always people who remembered what he'd been, who questioned whether redemption was really possible for someone like him. But for every critic, there were 10 more people whose lives had been touched by Primavera's work, who saw the tangible good that had come from Victor's transformation. Elena continued to speak publicly about second chances and redemption, her message resonating with people across the country. She wrote a book about their journey, honest about the mistakes, clear-eyed about the costs, but ultimately hopeful about the possibility of change. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Victor surprised Elena with a trip back to the hospital where she'd worked as a janitor. They stood in the parking garage where he'd found her that night, 5 years older and immeasurably wiser. I think about this place a lot, Victor said, his arm around Elena's shoulders, about how different our lives would be if I hadn't found you here. You would have found me eventually, Elena said. You're too stubborn not to. Maybe, but I'm grateful it was here on this night, because it feels symbolic somehow. You working in a place dedicated to healing, me tracking you down to heal what I'd broken between us. Elena leaned into him, remembering the terror and hope of that night. I was so scared when I heard your footsteps. Scared you'd drag me back into a life I was trying to escape. Instead you offered me a partnership in building something better. Elena turned to face him. That's what we've done, Victor. We've built something better. For ourselves, for our daughters, for everyone Primavera touches. We've proven that people can change, that love can survive mistakes, that second chances are worth taking. Victor pulled her close, and they stood there in that parking garage where their new beginning had started, 2 people who'd been broken and rebuilt into something stronger. I love you, Elena Moretti, Victor said. Thank you for not giving up on me. I love you too, Elena replied. Thank you for not giving up on us. They left the parking garage hand in hand, ready to return to their daughters and their life and their future. Behind them, the hospital hummed with activity. People being born, people being healed, people being given second chances at life. Just like Elena and Victor had been given a second chance at love. And they'd made it count. 10 years after that night in the parking garage, Elena stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., testifying before Congress about criminal justice reform. She spoke about Primavera's success, about the hundreds of formerly incarcerated people they'd helped rebuild their lives, about the power of believing in redemption. Victor sat in the audience with Sophia and Isabella, now 12 years old and already showing signs of their mother's brilliance and their father's determination. They watched their mother speak truth to power, and Victor felt his heart swell with pride. This was the life they'd built, not perfect, but honest, not without struggles, but full of purpose, not erasing the past, but refusing to be defined by it. After the testimony, as they walked through the Capitol building, Sophia grabbed Victor's hand. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to help people like Mom does." Victor looked down at his daughter, seeing Elena's compassion reflected in her young face. "Then you will, sweetheart. You can be anything you want to be." "What about you?" Isabella asked. "What did you want to be when you were growing up?" Victor thought about the boy he'd been, raised in violence, groomed to take over a criminal empire. "I wanted to be powerful," he said honestly. "I wanted people to fear and respect me." "And now?" Sophia pressed. "Now I just want to be a good father, a good husband, a good man." Victor pulled both daughters close. "And I want to use whatever power I have to help people instead of hurt them." "Like Mom does with Primavera?" "Exactly like Mom does with Primavera." They found Elena waiting outside, her face flushed with the adrenaline of the testimony. She looked at her family, her husband, her daughters, the life they'd built together, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. "How'd I do?" she asked. "You were amazing," Victor said, pulling her into a kiss that made their daughters giggle and protest. "Gross, Dad," Sophia said, but she was smiling. "You'll understand when you're older," Victor promised. As they walked out of the Capitol building into the bright sunshine, Elena thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The betrayal that wasn't, the separation that had nearly destroyed them, the warehouse confrontation, the twins' birth, the foundation's success, and all the small daily choices to choose love over fear, hope over cynicism, redemption over resignation. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and real, but it was theirs, and they'd fought like hell for every moment of happiness they'd found. Victor's hand found Elena's, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. Their daughters walked ahead, already arguing about where they wanted to go for dinner. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. And Elena knew, with bone-deep certainty, that whatever challenges came next, they would face them together. Because that's what they'd always done. And that's what they'd always do. Together.